The Lord is my shepherd. There is nothing I shall want. This is one of our favourite psalms, isn't it? And for many people, it's the only bit of the Bible that they know off by heart. When I go to people at the end of their life, it's always what they want to hear. I don't know about you, but when I was a small child growing up in rural New South Wales, we sang it every morning at the start of our school day. So it's well and truly in my head. But sometimes, familiarity with something leads us to take it a little bit for granted. So let's just have a look at this psalm. There are two big pictures in the psalm. The first one is that of the shepherd. And for all it's an agricultural image, it doesn't translate very well in our culture. In fact, when the Rainbow Serpent elders were talking about totems to represent different aspects of their faith, they made the point that they couldn't understand the shepherd images because the way Australian farmers treated their sheep was entirely different from the way the Bible describes it. They had to find a different way of understanding the shepherd pictures. And interestingly, they chose the sheep to be the totem representing the white man and his culture. The psalmist was writing out of a different culture to ours. However, when we read the 23rd Psalm, we still get a strong sense, don't we, of what it means. It's an intensely personal image. This is not just the shepherd, but my shepherd. The psalmist describes the relationship with the good shepherd, and that relationship is that when you are walking with the shepherd, you lack nothing. Green pastures, quiet waters, so your physical needs are met, but also your spiritual needs, which are for a restored soul and for you to be able to walk in righteousness. The psalmist tells us that even when death is threatening and our lives feel precarious, even then God is looking after us and we feel protected and safe because God is there. Now, it amazes me that the psalmist, and we're pretty sure that this psalm was written by David, but it amazes me that he could feel such certainty even before Jesus, the incarnation of God, came. David obviously had a very close relationship with God, and for all the things that he did wrong in his life, we see here reflected his great love for God and God's reciprocal, or maybe his love's reciprocal, the reciprocal love of God for David. And I think the fact that David was frail and broken, just like the rest of us, made no difference to his relationship with God. And for me, I certainly find that a very reassuring thought. The whole psalm is a consoling picture, one that many people want at the funeral of a loved one, because it touches on living and dying and the assurance that in both those states, God is with us. Now, when Jesus says in John 10, "I am the good shepherd," he's claiming several things at once. Primarily, he's saying, "I am your loving and nurturing God," not just in the 23rd Psalm that we're familiar with, but all the way through the Old Testament, there are references to the Good Shepherd, that is God. There are also, however, references to bad shepherds, other shepherds, who fail because they don't care for their flocks. Jesus is claiming that he is the one foretold in Ezekiel to be the Good Shepherd who would come and lead his people into the way of righteousness, as it says in the psalm. Jesus says he is the one who will lead us to green pastures and quiet waters. And he is saying that he is God and that he is the God who cares and loves and nurtures. But in this passage he says quite a lot more. Not only is Jesus the Good Shepherd, he is the shepherd who is prepared to lay down his life for the sheep. We've just celebrated Easter. We remembered Jesus laying down his life for all of us to restore the relationship with God. And this, of course, is what he is foreshadowing. And he's telling the disciples and all those who are listening that he is doing it willingly. He's laying his life down, not having it taken from him. But the interesting thing is that he is not only laying his life down, but he's going to take it up again. Over the last few weeks, we've looked at various passages that are the stories of what happened post-resurrection, and the disciples' confusion was evident. So perhaps they didn't really understand what Jesus was saying to them here. And I don't blame the disciples for being confused, because it's all fine in theory, isn't it? You can hear something like that, but when you're confronted with the reality of someone dying, you aren't expecting them to come back. Here, Jesus is trying to convey to them that while his death is the end of things, it's the end of sin and the separation from God, but it's not the end of the relationship, because Jesus is God. He is able to be restored to life and to continue the relationship with them. Of course, for us, sitting here today, our relationship has always been with the risen Christ, so it doesn't seem so odd to us. Now, we're approaching Anzac Day this week, and I'm always struck every year by the way that we remember our dead and their sacrifice. We don't forget the people that have laid down their life for us, do we? And that sacrifice is enough for us to honour them and to continue a relationship, even though, of course, once people are dead, it's a kind of one-sided relationship. The difference with Jesus was that he didn't just die for us, as those Anzacs did, but he rose again for us as well, to give us the opportunity of ongoing relationship with God. Now, of course, the reason our Anzacs were prepared to die for us, and so many of them died in a self-sacrificing way, is set out for us in this first letter of John, isn't it? He says, "We know love by this, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for one another." Those who lay down their lives have the hope of eternal life because of the hope that Jesus offers and because of the example he set. These are the values handed down to us as part of our Christian society. Now, I've heard it commonly said, and I think it's probably true, that when an Islamic person becomes a suicide bomber, and it would be just one little part of Islam, that they believe that they'll be a martyr and rewarded in heaven with a whole lot of virgins. Now, I don't know what the female suicide bombers think, but that's beside the point. But none of those young men who died at Gallipoli were expecting to be rewarded, were they? They simply did it because that's what they were asked by their country to do. And this is the attitude that was displayed first by Christ. And even people who have no relationship with God are still following that example. Jesus says that he is laying down his life for the sheep because of the relationship with the Father. It's what his Father is asking him to do, and he does it because of the great love between them. The question is, of course, why does God ask him to do it? And I think it is because it was the only way to reconcile us to God. It's the way that that pattern of scapegoating is finally broken. It's because of God's great love for us and his desire to be our shepherd that Jesus is prepared to die. The good shepherd, he says, is prepared to lay down his life for the sheep. And Jesus isn't only talking to good people or to people who are already in relationship with God. He's prepared to lay down his life for other sheep who are not in the fold. Do you remember in Luke's Gospel, Jesus tells us a parable about the lost sheep and the fact that the shepherd will leave the 99 sheep to go and find the lost one, and then there'll be a party in heaven. Jesus says he has sheep in other folds that he is also dying for and bringing into the kingdom. Now, this is usually understood to mean that the Gentiles, or non-Jews, and I think probably all of us sitting here are Gentile, that the Gentiles will be able to come in. But I think we have to hear this as an inclusive invitation. Jesus wants to welcome in everybody, not just those who are in safe little religious groups, but all of those who are in other sheepfolds as well. And just like the shepherd who finds the one lost sheep, there'll be a party in heaven for every person who comes into the fold. Now, that party is described in the second part of the 23rd Psalm. The banquet takes place in the presence of my foes, the psalmist says. This has troubled me over the years. I've struggled with this. And I wonder if what it means is that the people that we have perceived as foes will be included in the banquet. Don't know. So ponder on it and tell me what you think. Anyway, the banquet is a set table loaded with food. There's so much to drink that the cup is overflowing. There's perfumed oil to anoint your head. In other words, to make you special and precious like Jesus. And this party will go on eternally because we will keep dwelling in the Father's house forever. So while we are on earth, if we choose to follow our shepherd into the sheepfold, his goodness and love will be with us for all the days of our lives, and the party will go on forever. It's a most comforting and beautiful image that we need to carry with us through all the ups and downs of life. This week, as we go out into our world, we should go remembering that we are the little lambs of God, held, comforted, and nurtured by him. And so, we should stretch out our arms to welcome others into the sheepfold. We need to tell them of what Christ has done for us and what he wants to do for them. I am the good shepherd, Jesus says, who lays down his life for the sheep. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.